you're not embracing it, you have to. So whether it's an organization or at the individual level, I don't care what stage you are at your career, like the benefits of embracing it now is so important, so critical. We have our organization where folks are starting to use it more and more each day, because part of it is we're kind of doing that like nice gentle nudge of, hey, so how'd you use it this week? We're doing, the obvious stuff, the easy stuff, right? It's around truly tapping into just competitor intel, consumer sentiment, category insights, pricing. I mean, things that we're doing, it's just, if you're not, it's almost table stakes. You got to do it.
Welcome, everybody, to the Dig In podcast. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Saverio Spontella, SVP, Sales, Marketing, and Innovation at Lando Frost. So, Saverio, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to today's chat.
Thanks for having me, Jess. It is a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to get going with an impromptu question. You have not seen this one coming. I'm going to see if I can stump you. If you could invent a holiday, what would you celebrate?
If I could invent a holiday, this is going to sound so terrible. It would be a do nothing day.
Oh, actually,
And
that sounds delightful.
I think it's because it's rare when you actually have a day where there is nothing going on.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, all of us, right? So where I'm at, household, there's 5 of us, 3 relatively young kids still. There's always something going on. So if I had a holiday, it would be a do nothing day where you literally do nothing. A little bit
I
of a
love
Seinfeld feel to it, but yeah, I would go with that. So,
Sign me up. I would totally subscribe to that. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, as well as your role today.
sure. So currently today, I'm at a company called Lando Frost, based out of Munster, Indiana. It is a family-owned company that specializes in really anything protein-based. So it's lunch meat, hot dogs, bacon, things of that nature. And I've been with the organization for 4 years. It's led by our CEO, David Van Eckeren, who I report into, and lead up our sales, marketing, and R&D functions at the company. Get the privilege of leading about 50 plus individuals across all these functions. So it's commercialization activities, it's obviously brand marketing, it's activation, it's our sales team, trade, category management, insights, all that good stuff. So been a heck of 4 years, really enjoyed a lot. We get to do a lot of fun work here. We get to move fast. We get to make decisions quickly. So really enjoying my time at Lando Frost. For that, I was actually in the pasta sauce business for a company called MizCon
Mhm.
and led their sales organization there for Ragu and Bertolli. Did
Mhm.
that for a couple of years. Another great experience. Japanese owned company, great people, great culture. Enjoyed my time there. Before MizCon was 8 years at an organization called Glambia. I was in the health and wellness space, protein, sports nutrition, supplements, protein powders, vitamins, energy drinks, and held various marketing roles over there during my time. And that was another great experience. Glambia had recently acquired those brands when I had joined the company. So it was really just a fun startup type of environment, building capabilities from the ground up, working with awesome, talented people there as well. Prior to that, all started at what is now Tyson, but back then it was called Sara Lee. I started off my marketing career working on brands like Hillshire, Ballpark Franks, and kind of full circle. I'm back to doing lunch meat and hot dogs, and that's where it all began many, many
Yep.
years ago. So
Actually meets.
didn't plan it, but yeah, I guess I like the space, and here I am. So
Yeah. It's so cool too, the diversity of those businesses you've worked on. It's really cool. My last few podcast guests have spanned those categories actually. So I feel like I've been talking a lot about the stuff that you've worked on in the past. So
that's
it's good
great.
to bring it back together. Yeah. Well, let's dig into that background because at Land of Frost, you have a really cool story. And what I love about this story is I think our listeners are going to learn something new, maybe get a little life hack, a little professional hack, because you led the search and discovery for a new agency partner and you approached it in a very novel way.
Yeah,
So if you don't mind, go back to the beginning. What was kind of the context at the time and what originated this new way that you approached it?
sure. Well, and this is pretty fresh in all our minds still because we're actually right at the home stretch of making the final decision on which agency we want to partner with. So
Hmm.
it's all really new to us. We basically going back 3 months as we talked about, all right, we're this challenger brand. We're doing great things. Lana Frost is one of the brands. We have a few other brands, but Lana Frost is really our bread and butter.
Hmm.
One of our goals is to, before it's all said and done, I want people to call it Lana Frost, not Lando Lakes. That'd be
Hmm.
fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
avoid that consumer confusion. But, so one of the things, if we think about that next phase of growth, what we said was, all right, we're charting out the course. What does that look like? Who do we want to partner with? And at that time, we said, okay, we think we're ready to, based on where we're going, find that right partner to come along with us on that journey. And we decided back in May, so just a few months back, to say, yeah, we should probably start a search. And then myself and marketing director, a couple other folks, we looked at each other and said, okay, how are we going to do this? We're a lean team. We just we're not a small company by any means, but we're definitely not some of the probably the larger guests you talked with in the past. So, we just started thinking about it and we kind of put it on hold for a little bit. And then I was actually, I was on a flight to somewhere, had some good internet access, and it kind of dawned on me to say, all right, let me just start messing around here. And so was at that time, I think it was using Grok. I was on X and started messing around with Grok and just started asking some questions around, really just ask questions like, how would I go about doing this? Give me some
Uh-huh.
thoughts. Give me some feel for like, kind of describe the situation of where we're at. It kind of became this back and forth conversation of how I could start thinking about it. So then I also went to another one that everybody uses and went to ChatGPT and started kind of doing the same and started comparing and contrasting on ways to go about this search, which then ultimately led to providing some specifics around what I'm looking for, what our team was looking for around the criteria, size of agency, location, capabilities, and which then led to these both models producing and generating suggestions of agencies that we should consider and talk to.
Mhm.
And so it started really snowballing from that standpoint to say, okay, I think we're on to something. And again, I have no idea if these agencies are right at this point, if they're truly, if the criteria are being followed. But it got me excited because it was this all of a sudden, this extra resource that we hadn't even thought of. And
Right.
so we started tapping into it at that point and kind of, like I said, snowball from there and led us on this pretty fun journey over the last 3 months.
Yeah. Tell me more about the context that you gave for your criteria because I imagine that will serve up very different agencies. So you don't have to share your secret sauce to it, but what amount of context did you have to give to get the right result, you think?
Sure. It was a good fair amount because I think and they both respond differently, right? In these two cases, right? I could have tapped into Gemini and I didn't use Gemini in this case, but really focused on these two. And there was a lot of just kind of back and forth, additional prompts. Yeah, all right. Well, got it. But now let me add this piece of criteria based on what it kind of, the output that it gave me. Just the core things that, like I mentioned, around here's what we're looking to do. Here's call it roughly what we think our media spend looks like for the next year or so. And then it gave us some context around here's how much we think we want to spend on let's call it paid social versus CTV versus, influencer. And so it kind of provides some guardrails what we're looking for. Now, for me, was now getting pretty specific with the request of seek out those agencies that you can actually back it up. Like give me some proof points that they meet these criteria. So eventually it led to that in terms of those resources that it tapped into. So, some obvious resources would go into kind of advertising age rankings and it pulled up what capabilities that they're known for. It would go to other sources that provided just more details as to, okay, great. This gave me some reassurance to say, all right, we're on to something. Sounds like we're getting some good stuff here. So really the criteria varied around programmatic capabilities. I would say programmatic to some degree, um, tech, measurement and reporting, who's just got a reputation for kind of like being cutting edge
Mhm.
around testing and learning. So things of that nature, ultimately ended up getting a laundry list of 20 plus agencies across the two where I was like, okay, this is great. I mean, I had zero, right?
Mhm.
And now 20 almost seems like way too much. Like, where do you go from there? But it was awesome just to have 20 out of the gate to now dig into further. And what I liked about it too was both models would even then just say, here's their strengths, here's their watch outs. Because we wanted, folks that are or agencies that are in our space that do CPG, do food, but don't have competing conflicts and would even
Mhm.
like search for that. So that was great. So, we started just really putting that together to say, okay, it's providing me with agencies that I'm not sold yet that we should be going down this path, but providing the proof points and it's showing that here, if you want to check my resources, go ahead and do it type of thing. And even providing links as to where it was pulling this information from. So we're starting to get some confidence to say, this could be a good thing. We could probably fast track this a little bit even further and go down this path.
Gosh, it's so interesting. If you think about, I'm sure you vetted many agencies in your career, and it sounds like this is the first time you really leveraged AI to do that initial vetting. And I'm just kind of likening it to, how the dating world has changed so much and how much
Yeah.
information you know about your first date before you show up to that first date. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, was it ever almost like TMI? Like, I don't want to have all this information. I want them to pitch me on it. Or like, I'm just curious, what was the balance of, having all that at your disposal and how
Yeah.
well it jived with what they actually showed up and sort of pitched to you?
Yeah, it was good. It didn't go too deep. And part of it too, though, I kind of prevented, kind of held myself from going too deep as well.
Mhm.
So I could have gone deeper and deeper and do a deep dive on these individual agencies, but it gave me enough where, I knew it was a swipe left or swipe right, whichever's the right one,
Yeah.
right? But I
Yeah.
knew like, okay, there's enough interest there. Fantastic.
Mhm.
Love it. And then met with, my marketing director and a couple other folks on the team to say, here's what we got. And the cool thing was too, how did I show them this? Because where there are differences in the two models in particular, we used both, right? Grok does not have the functionality to really do any type of output in terms of documents, any type of PDF, Excel, whatever. So Chad, on the other hand, was able to generate this beautiful Excel spreadsheet with all the key components that, based on the conversations that we were having, with links directly to their sites where you can just embed it right into the spreadsheet, like all this great stuff that
Mhm.
I could share with my team and say, and initially with some folks, I didn't tell them I had any assistance, right? But
Mhm.
pretty quickly on, like, I let them in on that. But it was just an awesome way to just get things rolling. And from there, we had these roughly 20 agencies and said, tell me initial thoughts, tell me if there's any watch outs, any red flags. So we did a really high level, a kind of initial, call it scrub on if there are any watch outs with the agencies that these two LLMs had generated. And then we said, all right, I think we can make some contact from that list.
Yep.
And we kind of went from there. So yeah, we didn't go too deep on wanting to know because to your point, until you really have a capabilities discussion, you're only going to get so much that is publicly available. So we had enough to keep going forward.
I think it's just fascinating. Did it trip you up at any point? Was there a spot? Because sometimes, right, ChatGPT and other AI models are not always
Yeah.
right. So, did you
Yeah.
get tripped up at any point?
That's what tripped up. I would say just where the criteria wasn't always adhered to.
Mm.
And that was both models where you'd sometimes have to get stern with the model and say, this is not what I asked for. Don't do it again in your
Yeah.
prompt. And it's amazing how that works sometimes. So you would get the output back, and hopefully I'm not coming off it or sounding like it was so easy to do because there is so much back and forth and
Yeah.
follow up prompts and multiple iterations. So there is work involved, right? There is definitely this component of like, all right, it's not just give me a list of 15 agencies and I'll go run with it. There are, I would say, many, many hours involved in terms of, shaping it and making sure that you feel good about the output before we took that next step of getting in touch. So
Yeah.
just if anything, just the criteria sometimes, yeah, it's like, nah, you didn't hear me on that one. Let's try it again.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
the phrasing that you have to be stern with the model. My big pet peeve is when I put in, something into the chat and then it immediately comes back with this whole thing. I'm like, so now I have to say, don't do anything with this yet, but I am going to provide this, whatever it is, and just pause. Like,
Right.
don't don't go yet. So
So you,
I
so
get
you have yourself to deal with stuff like that. I mean, there are like so many good tricks that I'm like,
yeah,
I love hearing examples like that because there are
yeah,
ways to like, yeah, you got to keep the conversation on the right track, but you don't
yep.
want to lose thought of what just came out, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I've
that's great.
definitely done that where I feel like we go rabbit hole and I'll say, I feel like we lost sight of the original point and it'll say, good point. Like so it's
You're
just really
right. Well,
yeah.
let's
Yeah.
wind it back. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you measure success for this type of initiative? I mean, it's just so fun how fast things are changing and just especially in your domain of sales, marketing, innovation. Like, there's so many ways that AI will change your day to day, but how do you measure the success of this type of initiative?
Well, for this one specifically, and hopefully when it's all said and done, next week we plan on informing one of the agencies that we'd like to go into long-term partnership with. And
Hmm.
up to this point, I can honestly say, where we're at, this feels like a success. Obviously it was a learning process as we went through it, but I think it's just going to become commonplace where more, I would say, smaller organizations, independent business owners are going to be tapping into this type of just approach because I do think it works,
Yeah.
And again, you will get bad data. Look, I'll be very blunt, right? And like as we went on these capability discussions with this ultimately ended up being 12 agencies that we talked to. So, there's still a lot of time and commitment that goes into it. And as we did these capability discussions, some of them were just way no, just okay. Yeah, whatever I got from
Absolutely.
the LLMs, just yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
really didn't work out for us. So overall, I mean, you're gonna get that, but I think the success rate of I would say quality, fantastic agencies that we talked to, candidly, I was blown away. So for me, like from that perspective, I don't know how we would have done that. I mean, we could have tapped into a third party, like I had done a couple companies prior, and had them do the scouring for us and find the agencies, but we would not have gotten here by any means whatsoever. Knowing because we're trying to do our day jobs as well, we probably wouldn't have tapped into a new agency until sometime next year. And so, just the ability for us to do it as quickly as we did, and the quality of the agencies that we found was just awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that story. Thanks for sharing it. Like I said, I think our listeners just picked up a new hack, and I'm sure you're open to sharing your prompts and how you sort of were stern with
No,
your
absolutely,
too.
for sure.
Yeah. So let's kind of turn to you as a thought leader and a passionate professional. What's something you could just give us a rant on in terms of your point of view, a passionate point of view?
Yeah, I think for me, it's related and relevant to what we're talking about. You just mentioned that things are changing so rapidly. Especially with the introduction of AI over the last couple of years, and I would say we're embracing it as an organization. I personally am embracing it, but nowhere near where I should be personally. Like,
Hmm.
scratching the surface. It's finding the time and the commitment to do it. But I know personally, and what I kind of preach to my colleagues and folks outside of work is like, you got to embrace it. Like, you have to embrace it. You have to find a way to embed it into your daily routine. Start your day off with like, how can I use whatever type of AI tool that I think is relevant in helping me solve a business problem or to do something better in my job. It's not a habit yet, right? It's not a habit for me necessarily. It's becoming one,
Hmm.
but I think for me, if you're not embracing it, you have to. So whether it's an organization or at the individual level, I think the benefits, I don't care what stage you are at your career, like the benefits of embracing it now is so important, so critical. We're using it. We actually have an enterprise version of chat that we're using in our company, which is great.
Yeah.
It's still fairly new, and we're getting there. We have our organization where folks are starting to use it more and more each day because part of it is we're kind of doing that like nice gentle nudge of, hey, so how'd you use it this week? Share a case study, share use cases on a Friday. We'll do that on a Friday where we'll have use cases being shared and it's pretty informal, but we'll kind of apply the gentle pressure to say, so how'd it help you this week? What'd you do?
Right.
And we're starting to see that momentum pick up. And I think it's so important. So we're doing the obvious stuff, the easy stuff, right? It's around truly tapping into just competitor intel, consumer sentiment, category insights, pricing. I mean, the things that we're doing, it's just, if you're not, it's almost table stakes. You got to do it. And so
Yeah.
that's my rant and, something I could talk for hours about.
Yeah. Well, and how are you thinking about it in terms of how you assess employees? Because, if someone's not, since you do have an enterprise license, if someone's not in there and exploring and experimenting, what does that tell you about them as an employee?
Yeah, I think my initial kind of thought on that or my initial reaction is just trying to understand what's the why behind it.
Uh-huh.
I think for folks who don't embrace it out of the gate, I think it's not surprising because it's foreign.
Uh-huh.
It's not necessarily. I've heard others say, well, it's they don't want to embrace it because they don't want a AI replacing them or anything like that. I really don't think for most individuals that's what it is. I think it's more of a just we're a creature of habits. If you're not using something and all of a sudden you're being told go use it, many folks, including myself, would be you're initially reluctant to do it, and so I think it's just more of, I don't know what I don't know. How do I dive in? How do I jump in? So, one of the things that we're doing is we're providing that training on some of these core tools. So this way, there is no right or wrong, right?
Right.
It's just become familiar with it, just become accustomed to using it. And the way we can best do that is encourage each other, which is what we're doing with these kind of like Friday emails of how'd you use it this week? But then also make sure that we're providing the resources and the tools to get the foundational skill set down. It is from my standpoint, it needs to become a foundational skill set. But if a company isn't providing that resource to actually learn, to be trained, well, then that's why I think you get that resistance of where individuals are like, yeah, it's just not top of mind. I'm not thinking about it. It's not top of
Yeah.
mind. I don't know how to do it. So I'm just going to keep doing what I do. So
Yeah.
I think that's really, if I had nothing to back that up other than my own opinion, but I think that is probably the main driver as to why you have a good number of individuals who don't embrace it out of the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the creature of habit. I think also it can feel kind of chaotic to some people that might be a little bit more process oriented. And in my
Yeah.
experience, you just
Yeah.
have to get in there and experiment and try it out. And that's been a mind shift for me because I'm a person historically that really does like to be super buttoned up before I roll something out, especially to a big group of people. I
Sure.
really like to have sort of answered all the questions and sorted through all
Yeah.
the bugs.
Yeah.
That's just not possible anymore, right? You
Yeah.
just got to get people in there, and so I've had to really force myself to do that. And but I've been enjoying it. And I'm just curious, like, could you share one of the more surprising things you've used AI to do? Whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, just one of the things that might be a little out there.
I was just praying, but I used the heck out of it to guide us and plan a vacation for us.
Yeah.
Well, not really a surprise. I mean, I think a ton of people are doing that now. But it even got to the point we were traveling abroad, and we needed to figure out how to get to the right destination to hop on a ferry to get to the next place. And I'm literally like with my phone, I'm in chat saying, "Okay, here's where I'm at right now. Here's my location. Tell me where is the right stop to go to get here." So now it comes to a point where like maybe I'm using it a little too much, right?
Right,
But
right.
I use it to plan the broader vacation. Hey, here's the agenda, here's the itinerary to the point where the kids just like, this is not a vacation, this sucks. Like, what are we doing? But to then, using it in real time to say, okay, I'm in the vacation. Now I need help going from here to here.
Yeah.
So it's just ridiculous. It's just nuts. Yeah.
That's so funny. Have you used the Monday feature in ChatGPT?
No.
Oh my god, please look into it. It is basically like a sassy version, and so it's super sarcastic, and, I use it for the weirdest things, like, I went into it the other day, I was like, "Tell me, should I just get over myself?" And it'll just come back with this whole theory, or I will bring it tricky situations. I'm like, "I'm going into this meeting where there's a little friction, here's what's going on, like, give me the
Yeah.
right talking points," and so it's just
Yeah.
fascinating, and I have to be careful not to use it, and that's the sassy version, that's Monday in
That's the
ChatGPT.
money.
Yeah, in the normal version, I will use it to prepare for a difficult meeting. I'll give it context and say, "Remind me good talking points," and it almost starts to feel a little bit therapist where I have to be careful that I'm not
Yes.
completely reliant. But at one point, it even kinda I'm using ChatGPT in this instance, it came back with like, "You got this, and if you need any, other help before you go in, I'm here." And I was like, "Wow, I really feel like
It's
I'm
like
relying on."
reassuring. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's good.
Um,
And I
yeah.
feel like even with the newer version, I almost feel like I have to kind of recalibrate it because I almost feel like it's a little bit too reassuring with me sometimes. Like,
Oh,
no, don't tell
yeah.
me what I want to hear all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah. So it's almost like you got to retrain it to some degree. But that's great. I'll
yeah.
have to check out the Monday version.
Oh,
That's awesome.
please, it's so funny, and yeah, share with me some of your funnier interactions if you can. So we're gonna move to the final dig. This is just all
Okay.
about you as a person out there using ChatGPT to find the best ferry stop, okay? It's that guy. So what's the last product or service you bought on impulse?
Last product was Impulse. It was a based off a road trip that I had with a couple of my kids recently, about 3 weeks ago. Took a road trip to Canada to see a little band called Oasis in
Yeah,
Toronto. Since we were there, and being the marketer and the salesperson that I am, I had to take my kids to Loblaws because it's not often you get to go there. And as we're going down the aisles just to get a couple things for the trip back to Chicago, we came across President's Choice cookies.
oh,
And
yes, yep,
I don't know how many folks are familiar with it, but back in the day when I worked at Jewel Food Stores, it was a brand that I first came across, or private label, whatever it was, and they were just the most decadent, amazing cookies you could ever have in your life. But I don't really see them out here in the States. Like, I don't really ever
mhm,
see them. So just being there in Canada, in a Loblaws, and in the cookies aisle, saw a variety of President Choice cookies, and we stocked up. We stocked up. That was definitely the definition of an impulse buy,
yeah.
and brought those cookies back over the border with us. So
Gonna
I'm
say,
sure
did
there's
you
been,
disclose that at the border?
yeah, I would say I'm sure they're available here too. And we got past the border with no issues, but definitely an impulse buy that day for
Yeah,
sure.
very cool. Is there a product or a category where you could rationalize any price point, you just have to have it in your life?
Yeah, I think based around coffee for sure. So recently, earlier in the year, made a purchase on a nice espresso machine that I could rationalize it. And
Mhm,
the rationalization for me was, my justification at least was, I will be going to Starbucks much, much less because
yeah,
now I have this, machine at home. And that was my rationale, whether or not that's, a good rationale, but or whether I'm adhering to it. But that was the reason for it. So do like the coffee in the morning. And that was called definitely a little treat there for sure.
Yeah.
with the excuse of not going to outside retail, coffee places, spending $7 each time.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
was
I
it.
think that rationale makes
Yeah.
total sense. And not that you even need it. We know brands have distinct personalities. What's a brand that you would date and a brand that you would marry? They don't have to be the same brand.
Sticking to the coffee theme, I would date Starbucks all day long. I think that everything Starbucks offers, it's September, it's pumpkin season, and I'm down for it. But I am trying to stay disciplined and not go and use my coffee machine at home. Bought some pumpkin syrup to offset that, so that way I'm not tempted to go to
Correct.
Starbucks. So I would date Starbucks, and I would marry my coffee machine at home. Yeah.
I love it. You're really committing. I'm here for it. So, who's an industry leader that you would love to hear on this podcast?
I would say for me, going back to, we talk about the kind of different industries I've worked in over the years. Health and wellness always holds a special place in my heart. And so I think any industry leaders in that space, and, whether it's like functional ingredients or kind of better for you foods, like a brand like Simple Mills comes to mind. I think
Mhm.
they're a brand that we have their products in our household on a regular basis. And it tastes great, and you kind of get this better feel like, okay, they're better than, just a normal cracker. So really enjoy that. And then anything around like you think about supplements and longevity and all that good stuff. And I think
Yeah.
for me that any industry leaders in that space, I'm always down for that. I think it's
Wow.
such an important area, an important field.
Awesome. Yeah. Simple Mills is a client of ours, so we could probably make that happen. So,
Yeah.
this has
Yeah.
been a really rich conversation. What keeps you inspired at work?
What keeps me inspired is just, I think, the massive opportunities we have at Land of Frost, and kind of what I mentioned earlier, because we're a leaner, more nimble company, we can do things that I feel like, at least in my experience working at other companies, are just isn't always common. And I think it's just like we're fortunate. It inspires me to be here because we can make that impact. And so I work with a bunch of competitive, great people that we have a lot of fun together. We love working on these products and these categories together. We love the food too. I think that's, for me, that's important. I think you gotta love the food, right? It's not a
Yeah.
must have, but love that we're all into these products and these brands, and we have a good time working on it. And it's hard not to stay inspired, working on these products with the people that I work with. So
Yeah.
that'd be it. Yeah,
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that energy and all your perspective that you have. It's been an absolute pleasure having you today.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Jess. It was a lot of fun.
Like what you heard? Share the inspiration or head to diginsights.com to learn more about what we do.